Hello, Munich. Albert is a tough act to follow. He's one of my favorite people. And surprisingly, I will actually use some of the same words that he's using. But I will talk about stuff. The stuff that we wear, the stuff that we put on our faces, the stuff with which we wash our hair, stuff that's in our cars or the cars themselves. There's a lot of stuff that we produce, and a lot of that stuff is a product of petrochemistry. And over the last 150 years, we built phenomenal infrastructure to support that. DuPont promised better living through chemistry about 70 years ago, and it's time to change that. So we're talking about the bioeconomy, which is already 100+ billion, but it's projected to be close to 30 trillion by 2050, which is comparable to the internet now, adjusted for inflation. It's an amazing opportunity, and most countries in the world and lots of companies are embracing that. And we're at a very critical moment. There's a lot of corporate demand, government support, and of course there's AI. And the AI is accelerating things. So lots of stuff can be produced using biology. And this move from fossil carbon to biological carbon is inevitable. We just don't have another 60 million years to make as much stuff as we're consuming. Just like the issue with energy, we just need more stuff. We're not using less. The populations grow, economies grow, and we consume more. There are companies making commitments and changing the way they produce things. There are certain chemicals that are being regulated out, dyes, colorants, sweeteners. L'Oreal has promised to reformulate all of its products by 2030. So this shift is happening. And lots of governments are making commitments. The US has committed several billion to build infrastructure. Europe is still committing only to research. There are no programs for supporting biomanufacturing infrastructure in Europe. Yet we need a lot more capacity for production of this stuff, because it can't be readily produced using existing petrochemical infrastructure. And it's projected to be a massive opportunity from the investment perspective. Over 50 billion a year will be invested in biomanufacturing facilities, which are basically just large fermentation farms. Bioreactors with what is called downstream processing, where you get feedstock in, which is generally different types of biological carbon or sugar, and proteins come out. This is how stuff of the future will be made. And that requires a completely different thinking in terms of AI. AI is accelerating biological research, and we will talk about this on the panel, but there's very little connection between what happens in the labs and what actually happens on the manufacturing floors. And we need to take that data from manufacturing and feed it back so we design for that stuff to be produced and do it as efficiently as possible.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Edward, come on in. Take a seat here. We're going to get the other panelists up just one at a time. First, we have Christina Nescheva, who is an exited founder out of the synthetic biology world, but also worked in big pharma as well, so sees it from both sides. Christina, come on up, please, and take a seat here. And then we have, I think, Dr. Thomas Clozel, who is an oncologist turned entrepreneur, building exactly one of these AI meets biology models. Thomas, you're going to start with a few points, so please, over to you. Yeah, you ready to go?
Hello, everybody. My name is Thomas Clozel, and I'm the CEO, co-founder of Owkin. I just want your help trying to understand where we are with medicine today. Can you raise your hand if you think we can heal 100% from the disease I'm going to quote you? Do you think we can heal from a simple lung infection? Who do you think we can heal from that? Yeah, pretty much right? Can we actually heal today from a brain tumor, what we call a glioblastoma? Not really. Can we heal from a simple allergy? 100%. Not either. Can we even heal from a common cold? No, this is where we are with medicine. Today, medicine is nowhere. The most simple disease don't have a curative treatment, and we are there. We even use the word evidence-based medicine to qualify when medicine is based on evidence. Can you imagine? There is no other science where you have to say it's evidence-based, biomanufacturing or whatever. So we are nowhere. Why? Because biology is too complicated for the human mind. People are still trying to understand biology with a few genes and a few arrows when you have network effects, thousands of cells, billions of parameters. So today, biology needs to be reinvented with a new type of artificial intelligence. This is what we try to do at Owkin. We call it biological AGI. And this intelligence has to be used by agents to automatize big pharma. Big pharma with 200,000 people in average are nowhere in curing the diseases today. They are becoming very big M&A franchise with a big legal department. And if there is some amazing treatment that sometimes does go away, we could do way more with way less. So today there is a way to build an agentic AI, automatized pharma, but that will be based on biology because the future has to be of understanding things.
Thank you, Thomas. Speed pitch. And I'm just going to say, you threw in a lot of good buzzwords there. Foundation model, AGI, agents, queuing us up for the next panel we're going to have.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And I love the green shirt as well to remind us.
Exactly. Like
yeah, it's the stuff of life. It is super exciting, and we call this panel Biology's ChatGPT moment, but we've been talking about the bioeconomy for years. McKinsey has put out research report after research report. But we've also had the big promises and the hard realities. Names like Zymergen and Ginkgo and Amyris, who have tripped up. So I'm curious. It all sounds great, but Christina, where's the beef?
If you wait for the beef from cultivated meat, I think we'll all have to wait. Maybe foie gras, maybe foie gras. I'm super excited about biology and what we can grow with biology, but I just want to give a little bit of context about how we need to change the way we think. So first of all, that's one of the few technologies that we actually haven't invented. So we're building with something that we haven't invented, we don't actually fully understand. And on top of it, we've been approaching it from a purely engineering point of view, because that's how our minds have been working. Whereas, as Thomas said, biology is actually a complex adaptive system. And what we need to transition is from engineering the parts and putting them together, but actually, how can you start designing systems? And here is where I get excited, because designing systems is beyond kind of what our minds can do, and this is where AI plays enormous role. However, in certain parts of biology, Gen AI is fantastic, but generally, in biology, for AI, you need data. Unlike other areas, data in biology is expensive, and not only it's expensive, but actually what happens is that it's also very, very scarce and sparse. And you have these curves, whereas at the beginning of your R&D process, maybe you have more data, but as you start to scale, the data is less and less, because how many clinical trials can you do? How many bioreactors you can run at large scales? This costs tens of thousands and more. And so the cost per data point goes the other way. And this is one of the things where we need to think about how do we generate this data. And this is where new ways of manufacturing come, and so on. And I started with the cultivated meat and the foie gras. That's another thing that we need to think when we start a new industry. And Edward, I'm sure you can talk about that a lot. The cost curves, they don't look like they are in the others. And so a lot of companies started in, really, where do you start is important, and start with something that actually has the margin. Pharma is one example, but on the other side are some other functional foods that were more expensive. So I think these are kind of the core.
Right. I mean, in that axis, so we have, simple old me, I just need curves that look like this. And we have, I think, Rob Carlson, maybe is an attendee here. He's up there waving his hand. He's behind the Carlson curve, which is thought of as the Moore's law curve in the biological realm. And so I look at that curve and I go, this is great. And you've pointed out where some of the hurdles end up lying. So if we then look at that and say, what is actually different now? What is different today over this conversation we could have had 3 or 4 years ago? I mean, Edward, I'll come to you first, maybe then go to Thomas.
Well, I think AI is different. And when Christina talked about having systems thinking, a whole genome is a system.
Yeah.
A human being is a system, but also a small, like a bacteria is a system. And we're not far from being able to generate genomes of new organisms.
Can I just check how far we are? Are we
I think we're
nuclear fusion
we're
far from it, or are we quantum computing far from it?
I think we're much closer.
Much closer than either of those.
I think we're a couple of years away. There's a lot of data that's being generated. Genomes are being mapped. So some people tell me 2 years, maybe 5. How far are we from quantum computing?
Well, I mean, Jensen Huang says 20 years, so...
This will happen much faster. And it is really scary because we will be able to create new life forms. And we need those life forms to be significantly more productive than the organisms that we're using in biomanufacturing right now.
Right.
Because ultimately, and we need to feed that manufacturing data back because we are working with nature, and nature never had the evolutionary constraints of manufacturing costs.
Right.
So we need to think about this from a systems perspective and holistically. But we are close, and we're getting there faster and faster. The companies that you mentioned didn't have those tools at their disposal.
Right, the Ginkgos and so on. So I'm curious, though, on this, this question of complexity and parallels with the computing industry. One of the things that happened with computers they were very, very general purpose to get started, to get going from the beginning. The very first computers were used for a number of different things. Is it the same way with your biological foundation model, Thomas, or will it be application by application that the market develops?
No, first, I think the goal of all of our industry to go to singularity, which means an exponential growth in productivity of the agent. And so to get there, there is a lot of things that are needed. In biology, what do you need to make this happen? Discovering biology and making progress at scale is a foundation model. It means a barcode that represents biology, right? This is the first step. And it doesn't exist today. How can we represent biology into one vector? Then you need a lot of data. And today, patient data, a lot of treatment today is discovered on cell lines. Cell lines is not the human body. You need to get rid of animal models. Cancer was treated in mice 20 years ago, right? But the last thing you absolutely do need is hardware or the robotized lab. The future of the big pharma will also, in material engineering, will go through robotized lab, big robots with workflows that are very well defined, that can be controlled not by human, but by agents. Because agents will be better hypotheses. And I think we never speak enough about this part of the hardware. We speak a lot about compute, whatever, computers, chips. But the robotized lab that will be controlled by a little agent will be the probably masterpiece to make the big revolution, even more than quantum computers or new infrastructure in the GPUs or else. I believe that.
Okay, so I want to pick up on that thread because what you're describing now is a vertical integration of this approach. When did you realize that this vertically integrated approach was the way to tackle that problem?
When we realized, when we started to be able to code agents, I think the first be able to code agents that can embed some type of agentic AI and foundation models, and we could run an experiment in the lab, and we thought that the experiments were just like working really well. I mean, we did this like the few past months, and this was the realization when you actually have somebody playing in the lab that is not a human, and you can do probably much better and much smarter. This is where, I mean. So
is it just that the human lab person is too slow?
No, it's not. It's too slow. It's making the wrong hypothesis. It's bending the wrong workflow. Yeah. It's making mistakes. Yeah. It's not repeatable. You know how many papers in the literature are not repeatable? Right. So so I think like this. I mean, we just never speak about this piece of hardware. If you do AI in biology, you need to be in hardware as well.
I absolutely agree with that because in a way, Officinae Bio, the company where I'm the chair, sits between the two worlds. So a lot we are talking about Gen AI and how proteins design, so on. Someone has to build it, and to build that, you need to be able to translate the genetic code into physical matter, and you need to build the stuff with precision, repeatability, for which you need the data, the automation of the whole process. You need the robots, you need the agents, because otherwise, it's very noisy.
And of course, benefiting of the last version, less GA companies like O3, is going to help.
O3 is the OpenAI model that is, maybe you've seen it.
Yeah, maybe O3 is going to be released very soon. O3 is the new OpenAI model, and it's going to be among the best coder in the world. It is solving frontier math problems, and and way more. It's diminishing time to inference, and it's incredible. And so this is also going to be having access to these models help the full value chain.
So do we know, I mean, your business, Edward, is, in a sense, betting that Thomas and his peers kind of get this right, because your customers will be those people, right? Is that the bet that you're making when you think about the infrastructure you're building?
I think our customers are the largest companies in the world that will need to have these materials in their supply chains,
right,
that are using these substances, and will partner with companies that are in the labs, and we will partner them in two ways. We will use their technologies and enable them to make their technologies better. As I said, we need to feed that data back from manufacturing into the lab, and we need to make the hardware for production better. When Christina says we need to build, yes, build, baby, build. We need a lot of infrastructure to produce.
But help me understand this one, this question, which I think is different to the traditional hard engineering, which is, you know, you can create the biologic or the little microorganism in the lab, and you can get it to produce the thing you want to produce that's going to be useful. Maybe it's a nice lilac shellac for my nails, or your nails indeed. But then when you try to do it at an industrial scale, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work?
Biology is fickle and complicated, and we make mistakes, and the types of organisms we're using may not be right. We're trying to make organisms that are designed to produce one thing to do something completely different. It's like making humans act like horses. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
Where's it worked?
Egypt.
Okay.
To add to this, we all trailblazers here. We're all doing something for the first time. We are all category-defining company. You know, if you take like companies in LLM, which they're all amazing, like Mistral comes after Anthropic, comes after OpenAI, and OpenAI has opened the way. In a way, there is something that we are all trying to discover: how many parameters you need for a foundation model, what is the right lab setup. Nothing is, already been done. So it's really a discovery phase. So,
but it just occurs to me though that you're doing this at scale for the big companies, right? And you said biology is fickle. So does there need to be some kind of a feedback loop between what you're discovering when you put it in a vast tank, and you go back to Thomas and you say, hey, that thing you built me is useless in a vast tank?
There are hundreds of sensors in that vast tank, and they are collecting lots of data.
What kind of data?
They're collecting data on how those fluids move,
right.
What actually happens within the organisms, how the organisms feel, the temperature, pressure. These large tanks create phenomenal amounts of pressure, and it's sometimes very difficult for organisms to survive it. So we need to have organisms that are actually able to survive it, and we need to test and test and test.
Right.
And one of the things there on this feedback loop, because it doesn't go from lab scale to thousands of liters, it's actually go in stages. And this is where I talk about designing the whole system, because if you design just the organism in lab conditions and not thinking about how it ferments, it doesn't work. Of course, it doesn't like it. It likes the lab condition. And you need the feedback loop at every stage so that you can do it.
How do you want that feedback? An angry email?
Feedback is the most amazing thing to break the data wall. So, for everybody, there is a big concept in AI. It's called the data wall. It means we're hitting a wall of data. So OpenAI today, for example, is hitting a little bit the data wall because they've crunched the web, so no what else, And in biology, the beauty of having a lab or whatever is you can produce data to make some reinforcement learning and always improve the thing. So that's kind of the thing, the advantage, because there is so many difficulties in this business, having to validate everything, the cost of models, but you can create data in a lot of ways using this kind of robots and inference data from your test, and this is really beautiful because you can break the data wall faster than the classical AGI company.
Right. Okay. So you want the feedback. The feedback helps from Edward's company. The feedback then helps us ultimately understand how to tweak the microorganism in order to be able to survive at the scale that Edward is talking about.
Everything is in the loop. The lab is in the loop, and everything is in the loop.
But it strikes me that we're talking about such a wide spectrum, because on the one hand, we have lots of biologics today and incredibly valuable, right? Therapeutics that are big, complex molecules. And on the other hand, we're not going to be building those by the trillions of liters, right, Edward? We've got things where we're saying we want biologics that are going to replace plastics, So how do we make sense of the evolution of the industry from perhaps the end that you've professionally have come from, which is therapeutics, through to something that is effectively large volume, low margin? What are the steps? Where do we go?
Great question, right?
Well, we're actually making biologics at large scale already.
Right.
Companies like Novonesis or DSM-Firmenich are making lots of stuff using biology in large bioreactors. We're making most of our enzymes biologically or synthetically. We're creating or designing microorganisms that will produce them. We're making things like citric acid or vitamin A, xanthan gum, things that go into our existing supply chains using the same processes. It's just creating new organisms that will be productive.
Right.
So
when do you think those start to come into a material scale, or are they already?
Oh, they are already. And I think it starts with what I call super proteins. There are things that exist in the world now that we want, but there's no way for us to produce them in a traditional way. For example, 100% human bioidentical collagen. We can only harvest it from humans. We're consuming collagen in different ways, but it's primarily fish collagen or some other animal collagen. But that human collagen would be better for our bones, joints, skin, hair, everything. And we can produce it with 100% bioidentical collagen with precision fermentation. And that already exists. That actually is, and I will plug this German company. Being in Germany, it's called Cambrium.
Okay, so there's a plug there. We can maybe get the products if we're short of collagen.
Yeah, you can find them online. There are several companies licensing their technology.
Yeah. So I'm curious though to come to Christina because Thomas has talked a lot about the power of the agents and the new foundation models. You were building Officinae Bio before the AI was capable of doing that. What difference might it have made to you and your team when you were building that?
So the types of AI we use, it's not Gen AI. So basically, we have two sets of algorithms that the team has built. And the first set we deploy in basically telling us what's the best way to translate this long DNA sequence that we need to make the medicine or whatever into actually being able to build it. And as simple as it sounds, it's really difficult and it takes a lot of time. And we have the algorithms that actually do this in seconds and now fully automated with the robots, and it's done.
Right.
So the other set of algorithms is where the system design comes, is actually how do you navigate when you have a very large and complex option space. And this is whether you design microorganisms, genetically engineer, or even in pharma and drug discovery, you have so many different variables, but you're limited by the number of experiments you can do. And so far, we've been brute forcing, so high throughput screening, and really trial and error and see what works. Whereas we say, how can we be smart, and with every data that we generate, build the models, and ours are based on Bayesian theory, to tell us how likely it is to find the objective, to optimize for the objective.
And we come back to that idea of data. And so with that, I want to come, Thomas, to you for the last question, because there is a lot of technology. You had your Bayesian algorithms, there's all the biologics. Just as there was in large language models, a lot of technology, and it took something in November the 30th, 2022, to change this, and it wasn't really a lot of technology. So in your world, what is the wrapping or the product that would need to come together and be delivered to create a ChatGPT moment?
The ChatGPT moment when agents will have created by themselves, without human intervention, a treatment for a disease that the pharma failed to cure. Where agents will have delivered a treatment for brain tumors automatically with the right clinical setting, the right validation, and with as little human intervention in a disease where everybody has failed. This will be the biggest inflection moment. But you need a clinical endpoint. You need to have a patient moment.
That is a fantastic thing to aim for. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Great. Amazing.